think we're good to go. Okay, so just me, myself, and I, and hopefully you're out there hanging in. And I've been thinking about an issue, a thought. So this is going to be a little bit of a intellectual excursion, but with some musical flights of fancy. And the thought was, often in jazz education, because we sort of like have to compartmentalize these ideas or these technical aspects or even stylistic approaches, you compartmentalize them. But jazz is always more than that, I like to think. It's always without boundaries, and it incorporates. And anytime you say, you do this or you have to do that, there's always going to be a reason to do more than that or to break the rule. As one of my teachers, the wonderful and incredible mime and pianist Roland Wiggins used to like to say, back when I was studying with him, you have to know the rules before you supplant them. He wouldn't say break, he'd say supplant. And so the thought today is, when they talk about jazz as a chordal structures versus jazz as modal music, and they often separate them into two things. And really, they're just different, I like to say different angles of the prism, sides of the coin, many-sided coin. And so I'm going to just demonstrate a few ideas relating to that topic of approaching improvisation chordally and approaching it melodically over a note set, which is sort of what they talk about modal approaches. And one of the sort of important things to hear if you're not a jazz player, if you just enjoy listening to it, but also I think it's always good to go back to these very key basic tools that we keep adding and adding and adding. We forget to go back to the basics. Paul is to play melodies, not jazz. Oh, I like that, Tom. Good. He said something he learned from me was to play melodies, not jazz, which, let me unpack that idea, is that you're listening to what actually comes out, the sounds that actually come out, and you create a conversation or a logical phrasing that doesn't depend on a formula. It doesn't depend on it. You can use all these tools to create melodies and structures, and of course the formulas work because they've been tested out, and you can rely on them. But that's not the music. The music is what you play. So I tend to float between chordal and modal, just hearing it, feeling it. And I'll give you little examples, so I just can stop myself from talking so much. The leading tone effect, where you have a half-step movement into a note, creates this, the ear goes, oh, it's going somewhere. So if I go, you hear this resolution. And I just played this note. It had no reference point, you just heard the note. But when it goes as a half step up, then it leads to the next note, and then it goes somewhere. So I can do that all over the place. And it's kind of out, there's no tonal center, but you hear this leading tone effect. Well, if you take that idea and it's a melodic movement, but we have a harmonic implication. So for example, for those playing along at home, that's a concert C sharp to D. I make that part of a chord. I'm bluesing the night. And so now you hear the chord, the 5 chord going to the 1 chord. You hear the tonal implication when you put it in a chord. And that's great. But that doesn't mean that then we're chordal, it's just chordal music. It's like I could be doing that against a modal, static, root and a chord change that really doesn't go anywhere. It just creates color. And it's up to me then to create a chordal feeling, or this sort of feeling of tension and resolution, which, again, these are just words, because as a melody player, I don't really think in terms of chords that much. I think of melody. So it's a melodic resolution. It can have harmonic implication, but it's melodic essentially. So I'm going to play along now, and I'm just taking little chunks. it's gonna get ugly. Sorry, I don't have the technology to play in real time with fabulous musicians all over the world. That's my dream. We all get together and just phone it in, literally, but not emotionally. And but I'm just gonna be doing some play along track stuff. So it's gonna get ugly, but we'll do the best we can. So I just took I think I just doing the chord progression, the famous chord progression, modal, D minor, and then up a half step to E flat minor, basis of So What, Miles Davis, and Impressions, Coltrane. Well, let's see if I've got this queued up right. Bear with me. Here we go. Pause it for a second, because you weren't really. I mean, it's just music as an idea. We're not. I'm just playing with tracks. I know. Trying to get my lounge on maybe a little later, but for now I'm just going to express this idea, which was I was creating chordal feelings. You can hear this harmonic movement off of my melody over a modal foundation. So hopefully that makes sense to non-jazzers and jazzers alike. Russell, if any jazzers out there that want to cut me off of the knee, say you don't know what the hell you're talking about, that's fine. If you want to add any commentary or flesh it out. So anyway, I'm going to just let this play out, and I guess what I'm going to do now is contrast this strictly modal. If I was playing D minor, D minor or D Dorian. Yeah, that's another thing I wanted to bring up with when you are playing modally, one of the things I really got sensitized from playing with Indian musicians and working off of Indian classical performance techniques was sensitizing my ears to the intervals, which in modal playing, the intervals are so important, and even if you don't think of them as having some kind of harmonic movement implied, just the difference between, here's a natural minor, and then with the Dorian, just that, the difference between a flat six and a raised six, it just creates such a different color. So listen for that. Okay, I'm going to play, I'm going to go between the natural minor and the Dorian. Here we go. Let's start it again. Natural minor. Get the idea? Or something like that. Anyway, hope you could hear a few little things. I really love the difference between the natural minor and then the Dorian, and it just just opens up all these possibilities melodically. And then when you're taking this in just another jazz gibberish for non-jazz players, but it's the idea that a chord and scale are really the same thing, and it's just how do you want to organize the notes, the information? Do you want to... That's a scale, or you could do the arpeggios, which then you're organizing the scale notes into arpeggio, into chords, diatonic chords. And that gives you this feeling when you're soloing of harmonic movement. But it's over the scale, so it's really it's a matter of attitude. That's what my whole shtick tonight is: chord, modal, chord, scale. That they're really the same thing, and it's just how do you want to interpret it, and depending on the musical style and idiom, it leads you different ways. What have I got next? I do have a game plan, sort of. Okay, on this I'm just going to mess around here. A little Autumn Leaves chord progression. But in a little Cuban son montuno, I believe, backing tracks, we do what we can. Hey, Tom, Robert, David, good to see you. Well, see that you're seeing me. It's good to see that you're seeing me. Anyway, I hope everybody's doing good. It's been another weird day. Have to say it wasn't a surprise to see Bernie doing this very thoughtful thing after Wisconsin. I mean, is it surreal or is it just me to see election workers dressed like surgeons? Are you ready for your vote now? Bend over. And I mean, it just was a little surreal to see that in Wisconsin. Gotta hand it to that Supreme Court, though. They really know how to stir the pot. Anyway, that's all to say. It's weird, and so it's good to be playing music, and I hope you all are doing okay. So here I'm going to mess around with Autumn Leaves progression, and in this context, because Autumn Leaves, for those keeping score at home, it moves between the major and relative minor, and so it's chordally based. You hear strong harmonic progression, but you don't have to do that. You can just, I'm going to think modally over it. I'm going to start chordally and kind of go modally, and then we'll see what happens. Good luck, everyone. Now a little modal. stop just to bring up an idea. I can hear the little Autumn Levy thing in there. So of course, it's got the tendency to have the harmonic minor. Because the chords have those tones in there. So that's my default. I go off the major, go into the relative minor. Harmonic minor, sounds good. And you go all over the place. And then the difference between just like noodling and then saying something is a fine line. We all think we have something important to say. But that leading tone effect, if you that we started with, if you know that chordally in the back of your mind, say, oh, I know I can throw that leading tone in and work with the chord and pivot into the next chord, it'll give your phrasing a certain kind of finality or logic. It'll sound like there's a period at the end of the sentence instead of just the ramblings of a drunk, which a lot of jazz soloing gets compared to. But you don't have to do that. And my point is that I'll start with the harmonic minor, but I'm going to go off into some other extraneous scales that just have common tones with the key I'm in. But I feel like I can just do it. And then when I want to create some leading tone effect, I can. Let's see what happens. But what's cool is it's kind of going from the inside out. You can go further and further out in this modal idea that, for example, that's the harmonic minor, but say I go, I put in the flat second, why not? What's the worst that can happen? And you get some new sounds. Stuff there. Concert A flat in there. Why not? And then a lot of time I'll just play a note and then say, oh, now that I've played that note, where's it going to send me? So I play this note that's not in the scale. I can treat it like a leading tone. And then suddenly I'm kind of going off in that direction. Or the G natural, which would be the flat 2. Instead of, and it's cool because once you go, well, A, I think the important thing is I'm not getting paid for this, so I'll play my flat 2 if I want to, and B, it sounds, and it's music as an environment you're in, you're playing this stuff, and it sounds. So if you approach it as rules, like, well, I have to plug into this formula and then the music comes out the other side, yes, that works, but that's not necessarily life, What was that, all those Frankenstein movies, they put in all the stuff, the eels and all that, but you can't get that monster going. It's like there's some ineffable thing, get that monster going. So, more eels, please. So anyway, I'm just saying that, try stuff out, and with a modal approach, you go, well, why not try this note? It's not on the scale. It's like going to sound terrible, but terrible can be next to good. It's just a leading tone away from good. I made that one up. They say in jazz, you're only a half step away from a right note. So half step. You're only, terrible. It's just a half step away from good. So let me go on a little bit more. And if there's any note you want to hear, just let me know. Tommy, if you want to hear a particular note, I'm in E minor, G major, E minor, Autumn Leaves. And so what would be the worst note to play in that key? And I'll play it for you. Here we go. He likes M, note of M. I think that's note of M. G sharp, concert G sharp. I like G sharp. Maybe like a whole tone scale. It's just then, where do you go from there? M. Little Dorian. F flat, that's just E. That's a long one. Yeah, okay, we played the note of M, G sharp, and what I was doing, I like this. You're playing G major to E minor, and the chords are implying the harmonic minor, which has a flat 6, raised 7, really pretty. But why not do the Dorian? And when you do it, and that's what I'm talking about, these sort of sensitivity to intervals, you're not just doing it as a note and then like, uh-oh, it just went by, like, did I say that out loud, inappropriate behavior at a dinner table? No, you got to really stand by your note, so you're going to play that raised 6, then do something with it because it's going to stand out, so, flamboyant, wear a very flamboyant tie or something. I love the Dorian. Thanks, Tommy. Yeah, and so and that's another thing if you're thinking layers of modes, you maybe can layer modes on top of each other, I'm sure anything that I'm thinking was done 1,000 years ago already, but you as an individual are going to bring in this mode, and maybe it's different than what somebody else is playing in the band, and you can layer these modes against each other or have the modes talk to each other. So why not? And so let me do that a little bit more. I'm going to emphasize this concert C sharp in the key of E minor, so it's the raised 6. and where does it want to go? I could turn it into a leading tone, in which case we go to the D. For temporarily pushing your ear to go to D, or I could just. It's just this tension. It creates a beautiful tension. Let's see what happens. Et voila. Well, I hope I learned something from that. Now, just exploring these ideas, and it's more like I want to have these sort of jazz theory things be more of a beginning of a conversation. It's not like, oh, here, because if I just were saying, here's what you do, say what you do over this chord as you play this thing, and then I'm just kind of adding to this formula-oriented way of thinking instead of like exploring. All right, go feed the dogs. Well, do what you got to do. Tommy's saying he's got to feed the dogs. I'm taking that as a metaphor. I'm not sure for what, but you never know. This sort of sheltering at home can lead to some strange behavior. So, yeah, feed your dogs, but maybe pull the blinds first before you do that. All right, moving on. What have I got now? I'm going to switch instruments. Hope y'all are doing okay. I think we're going to go for another 30 minutes or so. Who knows? Jamie, welcome. Now, okay. I think what I've got here is an Tempura. It's gonna be a little painful because it's electronic Tempura, which is the drone instrument in Indian music, East Asian and South Asian, and particularly in the Hindustani and Carnatic traditions, you start off the performance with an alap where you kind of lay down the tone, the sound of the music before the rhythm comes in. And so I'm just going to be doing that. And the idea, I believe my root note is going to be a concert G. And it's got the fifth built into it. But it's a little bit, I remember it being a little bit weird sounding. Let's see what happens. And I'm going to, before I do it, what I'm going to do is kind of start off in the traditional alap. Some of the principles that I've been trying to absorb and learn from is you're playing the notes of the rag, of the scale, and the piece, the sort of the phrasing that's built into rag is kind of like a scale with built-in phrasing and approaches, and it's sort of telling you, giving you kind of a guidance as far as like how to express yourself, and then you just bring everything that you got, bring what you got. But I'm going to do that at first, but I'm also going to look at this idea of harmonic implication. So if for example, I'm going to be doing a I think I'll do a mixolydian mode. And I can just play modally, or I can think of the chords that are implicit in there. We'll see what happens. So yeah, just listen for that. And anything you want to say, feel free to comment. Tell me what you've been eating. Here we go. That was a little alap on a G. And so, I don't know if you could hear, I started out, I forgot to mention this principle of sounding out your instrument as you warm up. So starting low and really like taking your time and feeling the root note and then building up and kind of gradually going up the scale and to the higher registers and like feeling what you can do to express yourself. And then towards the end I was putting a little harmonic implication, like so you hear the melodically it's going somewhere, but it also has like I've sounded out the notes of the chords that are within the scale and kind of create like a little harmonic reference point. And this is my spiritual thought for the evening. When we're talking about chordal playing versus modal playing, or harmonic movement that's implicit in a melody versus just strictly melody freely flowing within the scale. If I'm playing a melody instrument, I can't play a chord like a guitar player. But with the mind and our ear and our memory, when we hear a note, it's there. After it's played, it's still in our memory. And that's part of when you play an arpeggio. You hear the individual notes, but you also hear the chord in your memory. So I think that's a very real thing and can be done when you're playing melodically. If you want to like give the listener a chord to hear, even though there's no chord, there's no notes. Technically, a chord is notes being played at the same time, but in our memory they reside. So that's my spiritual thought for the evening. It's like you can create a chord out of individual sounds. And in fact, if you wanted to take the metaphor further, you could think of different experiences in your day as being notes, and when you combine them, you've created a chord in your memory. That chord could have, like, somebody did something really annoying to you, somebody did something great, you had something delicious, and then there was that stinking thing in your refrigerator, and you put that all together and you've got a chord. Oh, that was a chord of the day. Had a little dissonance in it. Anyway, I need to speak louder to match the sax volume. Thanks, Dickie. Okay. So I should talk like this, eh? Yeah. Well, anyway, I don't have that much more to say. I was just thinking about that like, as a melody player, I play arpeggios of chords, but if I'm thinking, what is the impact of that on the ear, it's actually the memory of the notes can create the chord in memory, which I think is pretty cool idea. All right, what have we got next? I'm going to attempt to play off of a rag called Hansadwani. And as I recall, it's kind of more of a major 6. Let's see, and I'm just going to play against an existing rag to see what happens and try some of these ideas out. Hope you like it. Hansadwani, which I'm told means the swan. Let's see how our volume is. Hey Peter, hey Lynn. So, like I said, I'm playing off of the major, but it's really got at least the way I was doing it, I was putting a little heavy, and you can imply a 5-1 in there. We're not actually getting to a little Bach kind of stuff. Just little classical arpeggio runs. And, you know, as an experiment, it's kind of cool to try that over modal music, and you're implying some harmony, and it creates a little bit of directionality to your melody playing. You hear that leading tone? Yeah, and it's kind of fun just to be able to know that you can float between chordal approaches, melodic, modal approaches. Anyway, let's go a little bit longer. What else have I got? Well, this is going to get gnarly. I'm going to go back to the soprano for this one. And this is just between two chords, so it's modal, but I won't tell you where I stole it from, but from a D9 chord to an F9 chord, so going up a minor third. Actually, I will say it's very Herbie Hancock kind of a thing. So he does it in a couple songs. So you can guess. This is just a backing track, and I'll end with this. And yeah, just see what happens. And I hope you've enjoyed this, a little Jazz Wednesday. I hope to be getting back to playing at the Skylark Lounge every Wednesday. I sure miss it. We had been going 4.5 years before this little pesky coronavirus showed up. I was showing my roommate the picture of it. It looks like something out of a Shrek movie, or I don't want to say anything political, but certain politicians, I think if they could see their chakras, if their auras, some of that would resemble the coronavirus, a sort of green floating thing with suction cups coming out. But that's just my imagination. But it does kind of remind me of these World War II naval mines, that they were these balls with these prongs coming out and just floating there. And so now we're the ships, and you gotta like, whoa, avoid those mines. So wash your hands, avoid the mines, and do the best you can. I hope everybody's hanging in there. I know we've lost a few. We lost some celebrities. We lost some friends. Various ones of us have had connections to different friends, and it's very sad. And we're just like rooting for everybody who's struggling with it. I want to give a shout out to Ron Wilkins down in San Antonio. Great trombone player and wonderful person. And I hope that he makes it through. I mean, all we can do is keep trying our best and appreciating each other. So I appreciate you. Here's a little maiden aunt voyage. Yeah, kind of cool. Just starting to explore some of the chordal ideas going between those two chords, and this. We hear that chordal movement, and then all these major sevenths that are packed in there. So cool stuff, and I hope you enjoyed it. And what else to say? Keep doing stuff. We're about to peak, right? That's what they used to say. I took it half an hour ago. Haven't we peaked yet? But hopefully the virus is peaking, and then we're going to go see the other side. And I don't know, this Easter thing is confusing a lot of people. So pray in place, is that the idea? Pray in place. Just stand on one foot maybe and pray as hard as you can. Anyway, be safe out there. And I'm going to continue on with my regularly scheduled broadcasts here at the PK Sax Studios. We are continuing our fine programming tradition. And so what's today, Wednesday? Yeah. And I'm going to do story time. Sunday is now going into our third week of shelter-in-place story time. And we'll have another jazz whatever next Wednesday. And I would like to maybe continue this idea of a jazz workshop. Maybe that'll just be a weekly thing. I did the Kick Butt Jazz Jam, which is normally the first Tuesday of the month. Did it last night from the same curtains. And I like that idea of kind of a jazz workshop format. Maybe that's the best way to approach this limited ability to play together. We'll see what happens. And thanks for everybody helping out. I won't belabor the point, but I do have Venmo and PayPal, Paul Klemperer, and something like that. Or somebody like me. Give it to somebody like me, anyway. And we'll share the wealth. All right, carry on. Space Force. Look for Tales of the Space Force coming soon to a theater not near you. And we'll just continue making up this story as we go along. Have a good night.